Welcome and thank you for joining us for today's webinar. My name is Gayatri and I lead the Oracle Partner Sales for SuneraTech. So today in this webinar, we are presenting our views on how data modernization has become central to the digital transformation for many business organizations. We'll be addressing the 5 key elements of data modernization and how organizations need to approach it. Our eminent speakers today are Ram Kunduru and Vijay Indrakanti. Ram is the head of data and analytics in SuneraTech. He's passionate in leading, designing, and building successful BI insight solutions and platforms on a global scale. While Vijay is a subject matter expert in BI space who has handled some of the most complex data and analytics implementation and worked with some of the top customers. So thank you so much for joining us as well, Vijay. So without much further ado, I'll hand it over to the presenters.
Okay. So before we move forward, right, I want everyone to be on mute who's not speaking. And also Gayatri, so basically we will take like 45 minutes of the presentation and 10 to 15 minutes for Q&A, right? At the end, so that it will be like interactive.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, perfect. So, okay. So I'll just walk through. So the today's agenda is basically like we'll talk about just a little bit introduction about me and Vijay. Also, like we'll talk about what is data modernization, right? Everybody's talking about it. We will talk about what and why this is required and why it is becoming a part of digital transformation, right? For businesses. We will talk about that, and also we talk about the business goals and acceleration, and then we will talk about like Gen X approach and methods and methodologies, and also we'll talk about innovation. Okay. Okay. Just to give an introduction, my name is Ram. Again, like I had data and analytics practice for SuneraTech, and I have my counterpart actually like as a part of DNA leadership, Vijay in the company as well. Hi, Vijay.
Hey, hi, Vijay here. Pretty much on.
Perfect. So yeah, now we are on the topic data modernization. Okay, I just wanted to give like a quick introduction why everybody is talking about data modernization and what it is all about, right? And me and Vijay will be both will share our views how businesses are pursuing it and what is happening in the industry, and then we'll move forward. So as you guys know, basically like everybody is talking about data is new oil, right, in the economy. Like you just wanted to make sure that how can you extract maximum value using your data, and that's where it started. And also like if you see the research, basically the companies who have adopted the data driven organizations, so they have gained close to 20 to 30% of EBITDA actually through their operational efficiencies. And also organizations are seeing the value of monetizing the data and generating more revenue. So it's basically like, you know, traditionally like IT is all about a cost center, right? So now using this data, you can become like a profit center for your business. So you are adding more value. So according right now, there are two main drivers. Again, the specific business drivers will be very specific to the individual businesses. But if you see at 10,000 feet high, right, basically like there are two things. How can you optimize your operational efficiency? And as well as how can you generate more revenue? These are the two primary drivers we are seeing where organizations are looking how to utilize their data so that they can bring these efficiencies as well as generate more revenue. And again, as you see, there are three pillars which we believe in: people, process, technology. These three things go hand in hand in order to bring that value, right? And whatever the effort which is happening uh, around this data, It is called as data modernization. Okay. Vijay, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, spot on, Ram. So just wanted to say that there is a tectonic shift in the focus of all these business organizations, be it sales growth, be it meeting the mission objectives, be it development of innovation products, attract more customers, whatever be your stated business goal. That is the front point. And from product services kind of a differentiation, organizations are moving how to apply knowledge and information to enhance or to reach their business goals. So that's the bottom line. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. Okay. So I would like to bring a couple more challenges before we move forward. There are like, if you see this little bit closure, right? Like we talked about data-driven organization. I just wanted to bring in the characteristics of data-driven organization, right? Because we need to know when we are modernizing our data, right? Otherwise, there is no point. So if you see, there are three things I would put in perspective. One is the biggest thing is data democratization. That is very, very critical. And also the other aspect is data literacy. Like how can you educate and everybody within the organization think, eat, breathe with data. And that is the culture which you have to bring in. So when we speak about how can you do the data democratization, data literacy, and as well as how can you bring this data culture within businesses, right? We have seen there are three major challenges right now businesses are facing. One is with the individual silos of data, which is residing within the business units, within departments, which across departments they are not able to leverage. Second piece which we are seeing is data trust. How can they trust the data? And the third piece which we are seeing is, can you guys put mute? Actually, I can get a lot of background noise. Gayatri, can you enable? Can you mute?
Go ahead, Ram. I'll do it. Don't worry.
Yeah. Okay. And the second piece and the third piece people will talk about, that is a major piece which I'm keep on hearing, is time to insights. How can you reduce that? Because if you see traditionally, the biggest complaint against BI department is, oh, it takes too long for us. If I put in a request, from the time they put in the request to the time it delivered, it is taking long time. And how can you reduce that? So these are the aspects basically like which will be addressed as a part of data modernization as well. Vijay, do you want to add anything else before I move forward?
I'm good, Ram. Please go ahead.
Perfect. Okay. So this is the 5-step approach to data modernization. Okay. So we are doing this at multiple customers, and it's a proven methodology and approach. And to talk about the approach, right? So the first one we start is always about the business outcome, because you have to tie your any initiative, right? Especially the data initiatives. I want to tie to the business outcome. What is the business goal we are trying to achieve because of this initiative, right? It's always aligned with business, because traditionally, like it's always a technology driver, the data and BI. But I think like if you shift it's a pivotal shift to the business focus, right? When you align, then you are basically like aligning all your initiatives to drive value. Okay. So that is the first one, the business outcome, right? Declare the business outcomes and get business involved, so that you will understand what do they want, right, at the end, so that like their business processes and how the data can help their business process on a day-to-day basis, or to take the strategic decisions and all those things. So you need to understand and get them involved first. Vijay, you want to talk about data strategy?
Yep. So once you have the business outcomes well defined, then it's very important that you define what's going to be the data strategy to enable that particular business outcome. So when we talk about data strategy here, typically the things that come to our mind is how quickly can you pull the data? Is it important that I put all the data that is available across the enterprise? So here is your North Star. The North Star is where you go ahead and say, I have a very clear-cut business outcome defined. What I'm going to do is, for that specific outcome, I will get all of the data and also cross-functional data, right? Only for that business outcome. For example, if optimizing your HR is your expected business outcome, it's not only the HR data that you'll get in, you also get in all the touch points of your employees, be it their chats, be it their mails, etc., so that you get a grip of what exactly each of those employees are trying to do. Is it aligned to what the stated business objective of the organization is? So you need to think enterprise when you are looking at data strategy rather than the beaten path of a LOB specific or a subject area specific. We are coming from a lot of data warehousing and business intelligence background. You can easily connect to the word subject. The definition subject area is now pretty much elaborated because you have technologies, you have systems which can actually capture a wide variety of data. Yeah, Ram, please go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, so that whenever you start anything, right, it's important actually, like to add to Vijay's point, it's important to define the data strategy, because there are a lot more challenges in data modernization which we are seeing. I think we will come to that at a later stage, like what to do with your existing footprint, right? That is the biggest question, and we will address that later point. Okay, but it's very important to define that data strategy to align with your business outcomes. That is very, very critical. Okay, so coming to the process alignment, right? This process alignment is nothing but how do you automate all your data management processes? Okay, uh, it is very important that you are aligning these processes to your business strategy and as well as business processes. Okay, do you want to add anything, Vijay, on the process alignment?
Yep. So when we are talking about process alignment, it's not about one. It is about business process, which is well and good. It's also about how do you define that process, how your data is going to flow across the enterprise for that stated objective, right? So that becomes pretty critical in terms of having the entire lineage of the data. See, it's like this. So when we are, so I'll give you a very simple example. You're moving from one location to another location. Ram keeps doing that a lot. Okay, so you have your house, you have things laid out, you know where exactly what item is, etc. The same items, when you are moving from location A to relocating to a location B, you pack all of them, you mark them all, and then move to a new location, you pretty much lose where exactly what is. This is exactly what happens when you move the data from your OLTP or a business systems to a centralized repository. So in that sense, it becomes very critical to employ your information management processes right upfront so that you have a pretty much decent control on what you are trying to do and how you are pulling the data from various sources into a centralized location. And mind you, with the technologies that you have available, you can bring in data from social media. You'll be able to bring data, if you are not fortunate, from the IoT devices. You're also getting the data from pretty much anything and everything. So it becomes very critical. You have your at least some components of information management, be it data security, be it information architecture, all that kind of stuff, pretty much laid out, right? That becomes very critical when you are getting all of this. So I have seen organizations where they actually move the data pretty much upfront, right? And then started looking at, hey, how do I leverage the data? And now you have it, because once it moves into a cloud environment where you are getting data from various different sources, the continuity of business that is pretty much evident in a OLTP systems or other business systems is lost. And that leads to a lot of chaos, right? So get some of those things pretty much in place and then start working on the other aspects of it. Yeah, Ram, please go ahead.
Perfect. Yeah. Thank you. So you see the problem is, the data is transferred or basically like moved from one process to other process. It's very important to have that lineage, and as well as to build the trust, right? The data quality is there and the data integrity is there. As long as you don't have the frameworks and the methodologies in process, it's very hard actually like to get that confidence within the business user to use the data to make their decisions. So it is becoming a very critical part in data modernization. Okay. So moving on to the technology choices, right? It's again, uh, if you see the trends in data analytics for 2020, right? Everybody is talking about like augmented analytics and augmented data management, and they're talking about self-service BI and bringing AI ML capabilities within the predictive analytics integrated in the BI components. So if you see all these trends, it's very evident that everybody is trying to make two objectives, right? To meet two objectives. One is basically like, how can you make sure that your the data literacy part, again it comes down to, right, they want to consume the data by themselves so that you can shorten the time to insight circle, and also they are aware of your BI system so that they can embrace and incorporate the reports or the BI, the intelligence, the insights which you provide into the business processes. It plays a critical role. Whatever the data and analytics trends which you are seeing for this year, the end objective is towards that. So it's very, very important that you make the technology choices, okay, based on your key drivers. What are your key drivers and how it is aligned with your technology choices, okay? And the trends which we are seeing, I think like everybody is aligned towards the data driven organizations, because everybody is seeing that value, right? How can you use your data as your own asset so that like you can bring that improvements? uh, Vijay, you want to add before I move forward
Yeah,
to the
I
next
think pretty
question?
much you have covered just that, some of once you have your business outcomes well defined, and you also have who are your target audience who will be leveraging the data modernization. So I just want to maybe have, just to reiterate the point that when we talk about data modernization, it's about how do you start enhancing the existing data. For example, let me give you a very small example. So there was this sales that were done for a retail outlet, and in one of the star outlets of the organization, suddenly, particularly for consecutive 3 days, the footfalls were very minimal, right? So now the business is lost to understand why the footfalls were minimal. Now here comes a thread where they try to look at the weather in that particular area for the past 3 days when the business was down. They realized that there was a heavy snowfall impacting people even stepping out. So now that to me is enhancement of data, okay, for business. So once you have that kind of a data available, then your perspective changes. Hey, is it the best time of the year for me to launch a particular new product, right? So you are, I mean, it's not about, just accumulating the data and then running some analysis on top of it, which you have been doing for the past so many years, right? The data warehouses of the world, the ODS of the world, all that kind of stuff. It's not about just moving your data from location A to a location B and complicate it. It's also about bringing in those unforeseen or unattended kind of sources, unusual sources, bring them in and try to see those patterns and then enhance the value of the data and give it to the business, right? So that is what the whole crux of data modernization is about. How do I enhance the value of this data for the business? Now, once that is identified, you know who are the target audience that you are trying to accomplish and how that particular data is going to be distributed or given to the audience in form and shape. That also is more or less ironed out. Then you have your technology choices pretty much distilled out once it comes to all these four processes, right? You have audience across the world. That means it has to be a cloud-based thing. That it has to be a situation where either it is an enterprise kind of a solution or it has to be something which is, as Ram was saying, democratizing stuff, right? So these are some of the ingredients that automatically gel in to basically simplify your technology choices, right? I have seen situations, if you follow this with due diligence, your choices become pretty much very clear. Yeah, Ram, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's again, guys. I want to add one reiterate this point, right? If you see the trends which is happening in the industry, it's all about how can you integrate, okay, the insights, okay. It's not just like if you see previously, it's like you have to go and access a dashboard or running a report, but now the things have been changed, right? You can use your historical data and predict stuff, and how can you integrate that with your business processes so that you are making like an intelligent decision rather than reactive ones, right? Like it's basically creating like a kind of like a proactive environment with data than a reactive one. I think that is the shift which we are seeing. Okay, so yeah, going back to the step 5, right? The last step is educating and manage change. Again, I keep on repeating this. You have to educate. That is like data literacy piece, which we are talking. And also we are talking about creating the data culture. It is very, very important that you invest in people, you invest in processes, and also focus on culture, right? It's very important doing that if you want to see the value for data modernization effort. That's where the beauty lies. According to me, if you see, the data modernization is not a technology initiative anymore. It integrates with the business initiative. It integrates with the process. That's where I put, right, people, process, technology, and it brings all together. And that is the reason why these data modernization initiatives are becoming a kind of like I would say an integral part of their digital transformation. Yeah, Vijay, you can add on this piece, yeah, before we move forward.
Yeah, so pretty much you were spot on. So this, I mean, this culture change is typically most difficult of all these 5 steps. If you ask me, going by the examples and going by the kind of situations we have faced in our lives. So people are used to a particular type of working, and you download the report, you do your Excel based. I mean, they're pretty much technical. They're quite capable. They're quite competent in the way they do things. But again, that particular team is pretty much a minuscule team. So there are organizations which we have helped in completely democratizing the entire analytical framework, right? Give them the platform, and maybe have data scientists, citizen data scientist kind of culture. So that becomes pretty much an important component of what we are trying to do. Just add a couple of more points on the technology choices. All said and done, at the end of the day, data modernization also means a bit of reinvesting in the technology. So what the industry surveys have suggested, that there is almost a 78% change in the technology landscape or the platforms, which leaves only 22% of retention of existing landscape. So to that extent, if you are within those parameters of 78%, then trust me, you are well within your reasonable limits. So you can go ahead and talk to your business leaders saying that, hey, 78% is what is industry standard. Not all of it is about throwing the old one out, etc. There are things which are about upgrading. It is a combination of replacement. It's a combination of retiring out systems, etc. So that's just one more new point that I want to come up. Yeah, you can move to the next slide.
Yeah, perfect. It's again, yeah. Thanks, Vijay. I think let's move forward. Okay, so let's talk about when you are working on the data modernization, right? Again, I reiterated the piece that what happens to my existing data or data warehouse, right? It's again, when we talk about this, we basically look always at a long-term strategy. Okay, lift and shift is basically always an attractive option, because like you can do that, but it might not be always the right approach. Okay, again, whenever you are focusing on business, if you take this business centric approach, will yield better and measurable results. Okay, and that is important, and that is the reason why we are to just again when we are working, we are doing like multiple data modernization efforts, and we have seen different approaches here as well. Like we are doing some lift and shift, some we are doing like a completely new approach. So it's completely depend upon what is your current state and also where you want to go, what are your business objectives, and then what is the best course of action. And I would not say that lift and shift, that is one of the option, but it's not only the option. Okay. And Vijay, you want to take up the
Sure.
other points?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. So as we were discussing, so for example, I mean, nobody is here suggesting that lift and shift, as Ram was saying, that he has put it aptly. We are not saying that don't do that. Okay, it is purely decided by what exactly you want to achieve. And when you are putting up your business objectives, obviously you would have put up your immediate term, midterm, and long-term objectives. So keep that in mind. The second thing that you must be looking at is, don't be afraid of having a very elongated data migration strategy. Typically, the mistake most of us do is, hey, I need to get the data quickly into the system and then subject it. No, don't do that. If your business tells you to take the data slowly, maybe you want to focus on a particular line of business, please go ahead and only do that. Keep it simple. If you are getting into this unnecessary, unforced rush of pulling all of the data into a centralized repository, then that's where it goes for a toss, right? So that's pretty much very, very critical. And as I was telling you, I mean, we'll reiterate this point somewhere down in the slides. It's about going step by step, if that is your business strategy. And that is the right way of strategizing the entire data migration, right? And one of the most important things that you should not miss is your enterprise view of the data, right? Which means that, hey, if I'm attacking this particular line of business or a subject area, how well it is connected with other lines of business, bring all of that, right? That is point number one. And also try to connect this with how it is getting entwined with some of the social media things that are happening, or what are the outside influences of this particular data. So there is a large component of external data that gets included, right? So that is pretty much important. So the more holistic you understand the business process, you talk to the business guys, hey, what are the external factors that are not in our control but still needs to be observed, right? So those questions become very, very critical, right? It may not be always that the business is able to articulate, but as we practitioners, we are expected to ask those kind of questions, the right kind of questions, right? And at the business articulation, you would have got a firm understanding of, hey, what is the best case scenario outcome and what is the worst case scenario outcome? And then ensure that those are your left and right side of your track. Once you have these two things sorted out, then you are pretty much on track. The other thing that you need to pretty much focus is on, how do you automate, right? It's very important that how do you automate this data migration? Try to see wherever are the opportunities to automate some of it, right? Because this is going to be a significantly large and a long drawn exercise. Automation is going to make it pretty simple for you, right? So that is something which we have found out as one of the very critical factors. And then obviously the focus has to be, how do I make it faster? Fast is not about when you are strategizing, but once you have done, hey, this is the data that I want to bring to the table, act fast on it. And then also see, how do I optimize the cost? There are a lot of tools which are pretty much expensive, but you can get very much the same result by tools and technologies which are half the cost, perhaps, maybe, right? So these are some of the things that where you need to do a bit of due diligence in terms of doing your data migration. Yeah, Ram, please, you want to move to the next slide?
Yeah. I think, you have summarized it well, because like I want to reiterate one more point about this enterprise view, right? Before we move forward. If you see, one of the modern data challenges, what I have mentioned earlier, is the data residing in individual silos. Okay. And especially if you see, because of these data science projects which are happening, they are creating like an individual silo of data lakes per se for doing the data engineering piece, and it is creating a parallel thread. So it's very important when you are doing this data modernization, right? You have a strategy to think about the use cases which are useful for the businesses, right? And you incorporate that as a part of your strategy, and you are thinking through the best practices which are important. And this enterprise view of data, basically we are seeing that is a pivotal to the data strategy. Yeah. Okay. Vijay, you want to take up this?
Oh yeah. Okay. So this is something which is interesting. We have seen, a lot of us have seen the data warehouses. Some of us have dirtied our hands with the data lakes, etc., etc. But something new is happening in this landscape where while we had the unidimensional data warehouses, they have lived their life. They have given us pretty much, the word unidimensional needs to be understood in terms of what kind of data that it possibly can process, right? It's not about unidimensional in its business or outcome approach, right? The second thing that we have seen is, yeah, data lakes are good. It was a hype. A lot of people moved the data into data lakes, then started wondering what they need to do with those data lakes, etc. But of late, people have started realizing in its purest form, that's what is a data lake, right? So the term data lake, I'm sure most of you know how it came. If we consider data in a data warehouse as a bottled water which is ready to consume, data in a data lake is something which is in its pristine form, which is in its original form, not massaged, not handled anything. In that sense, it's like a water from a lake. So that's where the word data lakes comes from, right? So from that standpoint, it becomes a bit inflexible, right? That's where the new term lake house is coming. While it has the capability to hold the data of various varieties, it also gives you the flexibility of a data warehouse. So that's where the new term lake house is coming up, right? So once you are pulling the data into this kind of a setup for consumption, ensure, as I was telling a while earlier, you get cross-functional and full functional data, right? What I mean by that, just to extend the example that we were looking at a while back, the HR data, you are getting the data for HR from finance also, just to understand how people are paid, etc. You're also trying to understand if there are any deductions that are happening with those particular crowd, which is also from a finance data. You're also getting your data from your enterprise communications, which is, hey, how are these people communicating? You also want to get data, if at all it exists, wherein there are platforms of socialization within the organization. I have had fortune of working with some of the top banks where they had this platform of people collaborating on a social media kind of a platform within the organization freely. And by analyzing that data, they also analyzing the in and outs of the employees moving into the premise, outside of the premise, and also certain behavioral aspects, we could reasonably predict the attrition ratios, right? So I'm just trying to give this as an example. That is what we mean by fully functional, cross-functional, right? Bring in all the kind of data that possibly can influence that particular business area. So getting that right is a combination of business as well as technology, right? So to me, that is something which is very, very critical, right? That's how you enhance the value of not, I mean, it's not about what the data you have. You will start realizing that the data that the enterprises capture is only maybe 60%, 70% of it. It gets tremendously, improved in its value when you start connecting various things there, right? So that is something which we have seen working wonderfully well. Now that you are bringing all of this data into a centralized repository, data security and privacy becomes pretty critical. In some of the areas, these are regulatory imposed, right? So to that extent, you need to be very much aware of this. That's where, if you remember in the previous slide, we were talking about some of the layers of information management coming into this picture, right? So to that extent, it becomes pretty much very, very important and sometimes mandatory to look at your data security and privacy, because that is what is going to give a lot of comfort to your business users and those entities, internal and external, which are associated with your business. So that's pretty much very important. And once we have all of this data, you know the type of data you are getting and you know the kind of restrictions that you want to be implemented, then it automatically distills what kind of tools will serve your purpose and what kind of frameworks that will help you generate value out of this data, right? So I mean, it's pretty much logical, right? So once you have the data security, privacy sorted out, and you have what kind of data coming in, then you have pretty much very small, minuscule of tools and platforms and technologies to choose from, right? So that's what makes the entire process pretty seamless and integrated and logical. Yeah. Ram, you want to?
Yeah, thank you. So again, I just wanted to summarize this and put from what is going on in the industry, right? Just to outline, like from over the past few years, everybody know that people are talking about big data, data lakes, and what you call as a separate initiatives. The problem is, again I go back to the same problem, right? The data is residing in individual silos. As a part of this data modernization effort, people are looking at bringing all sorts of variety of data into one architecture. How that feeds, that is where we are seeing again lake house. We introduced a new term, but there is another term which is called as a cloud data warehouse as well, which is very popular and going on in the industry. And again, like why you need these kind of different acronyms and different technologies, right? It's a simple objective. We are trying to, how do you consume different varieties of data and comes into one place so that your business can use use it as a part of their decision making process, rather than basically running their individual initiative, which never goes, because like it's not optimized at all. As a part of this data modernization, we are looking as a holistic approach, where organizations are taking this opportunity to create that architecture to consume all the data and to create the insights based on top of it. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So now, we spoke about building the data architecture so that we can consume all the data, right? Now let's talk about the usage, right? The data usage, how this data is being analyzed by the business. So these are the four top categories which we are seeing. I would put fifth one as well, but we will come down to that in the later slide. But the first one we are talking is operational BI. What is operational BI? It's basically like, if you see, I have to make certain decisions in order to do my job, okay, which happens like as you go through, right? This is we call as a near real time reporting or real time reporting, and this is where the operational BI will play a larger role, okay, with the availability again, like, yep. So the next one comes is our traditional dashboards and KPI reporting, right? That is we call as a Gen X reporting, with various data sources being available. Now we are building like dashboards and KPIs to make that strategic decisions. And this is very critical for all levels of management, right? Starting from mid-level, like to the executives, how the business is performing. And this is where the Gen X reporting comes into picture. And the third one is basically, yeah, now you have these like dashboards and KPIs, but how can you provide these insights using some data visualization techniques so that it is obvious and also like people can recognize immediately. Okay, and there are a lot of techniques actually to bring out the best insights within using the data visualization techniques. And the fourth one which we are seeing is again the line of business data models, right? Like if you go with the HR function, again, like I'm going back to the example which I brought it up. So for HR specific things, yes, you have to build some what you call like customizations and which are specific to HR. But again, like it will integrate into overall thing, but you have to build that specific data models for a specific line of business. Yeah, that will fall under the fourth bucket. And Vijay, you want to add anything before I move on to uh, the advanced analytics piece?
Yeah, just maybe a couple of lines. So from a Gen X reporting standpoint, how is it different from others is there are few parameters that a particular reporting component has to actually satisfy with, to be called a Gen X reporting, right? So one, you need to have very top KPIs depending on the user target group. Then your ability to call out exceptions right? That's very important from a Gen X reporting standpoint. And then context sensitive guided analytics is something which is very, very important part of Gen X reporting, right? And also rule-based recommendations and actions, which are next best actions in some of the language it is used. For example, if there is an accident that has happened and the customer is calling, we don't expect the organization to respond to the customer saying, hey, what's your policy number? What you would like to tell the customer, hey, this is where you have the nearest hospital, right? So these are some of the things that are part of Gen X reporting. And advanced collaboration features is some of the very important component. This is very tool specific capability at this point in time, which is but very important component of Gen X reporting. For example, if there is a dip suddenly in the sales, Ram is going to ask, hey, why do you think there is a dip in the sales? And somebody in his organization is going to type back, hey, Ram, this is the reasons that it has happened. And this entire thing goes and gets it right back, right? And whenever this report is retrieved in future, all of this commentary is going to come up. So you are pretty much collaborating on the reporting tool itself rather than employing a different collaboration platform, right? So this is something which goes into a Gen X reporting. And then obviously the all important multi-channel delivery, whether you are, because the same report, I have seen implementations where a report that is meant to be deployed on a laptop is straight away being miniaturized and fit into, for example, a mobile device, maybe a mobile phone. It doesn't work that way because the real estate in these two areas is pretty much so different, right? So these are some of the things that we have seen from a Gen X reporting standpoint. The other one that we are trying to see is the entire exercise that we are trying to do is enhance the functionality for the business, right? So that is one of the very much top ingredients when we talk about advanced analytics, right? How do you enhance the functionality of these reports? And then how does it basically impact the adoption of some of these report usage? At the end of the day, unless the data is used, you are not defining a ROI properly, right? And anything that doesn't define the ROI properly is bound to fail, right? So these are some of the things that will come into the picture, right? So that's all I wanted to add, Ram. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. And to add to that point, right, the adoption, if you see traditionally BI always struggled with adoption because like if you see there are only 20% of penetration happens within the organization. So how do you increase that adoption? That is the reason why all these data initiatives, the data modernization effort, and I talked about the trends which are happening in the industry, these are all lining up to that, right? How do you increase that usage so that people can leverage the data which you have in order to optimize their functions? Yeah, okay. So, okay, I want to talk about the advanced analytics piece, right? Everybody is talking like the predictive analytics, the prescriptive recommendations, basically like by looking at some trends and hidden patterns which is happening so that businesses can make a proactive decisions and the course correction will happen rather than a reactive ones. Till now, BI always placed in that place, right? Now, using that data, using the new technologies which are available, I think now we have the capability to bring that value addition to the business. Okay, um, so this is what a platform approach, like the way ahead and democratization of analytics, like encourage business to own their data and drive the data driven culture by building analytical models with citizen scientists. So this is, again, we are talking, right? Once we have the foundation, then you will talk about the specific uh, what you call like LOB functions, where you can leverage that data to provide that business value to the particular the business unit. Vijay, do you want to add? Because this is like a reiteration of what we have mentioned in the
Yeah,
earlier slide.
in a way, you're right. So the only thing is basically, what we are recommending here based on our experiences is we are recommending to throw open the data. Now that you have your data privacy in place, you have your security in place, you have your right set of tools because you know what the business users are going to do with your data. Now it's pretty much the entire perimeter is set up, right? So what we are recommending here is build advanced analytics as a service, right? So that's what we are trying to advise here, right? That's one of the best ways, where you are letting your business to explore the data, to see what is happening, and then try to come out with whatever they think are the right kind of business linkages, right? And one of the ways to actually, once you have given the platform, which is more of technology and model, statistical model creation, you're also going one step ahead and basically encouraging the business by simplifying the whole of analytics algorithms, wherein you are letting individual business users, whom we call as citizen data scientists. It is not anymore a exclusive group of people sitting in some corner of your corporate office and trying to do things, etc. We have seen significant advantages even to the very simple data linkages and analysis, giving a very large mileage to the organizations, right? So right from the way you are actually going to give the data in a point of sale machine, which significantly impacts your outlet segmentation, right? And this is something which has been brought out by somebody who is not at all a data scientist, but had this understanding of how the data is flowing through the system, right? So there are numerous examples where democratization of this analytics has given a pretty much significantly large mileage. I'm not totally saying no to a centralized analytics team. You may want to have it, please, by all means have it, but also explore these possibilities where people who are at the floor level are capable of looking at these data segments and are capable of giving pretty much at game-changing dimensions to this, right? And the third and the most critical, and to me the most difficult challenge, is how do you handle education and the culture change? So some of the ways that we have, at Sunera, we have gone ahead and evolved a theory around how do you handle the entire cultural change as well. So what we are going ahead and saying is, align all of your reporting hierarchy to a very specific methodology, which can only be delivered by the people at the floor level to the higher levels only by following a data-centric approach or leveraging the data that is lying within the organization. So these are some of the techniques that are pretty much available to basically drive some of these changes. There are few situations where you need to enforce some of this discipline, and there are majority of areas where you need to drive this through a proper coaching and education, right? So as Ram was trying to point out, please invest on some of your people, the processes. Technology is always capable of delivering what you have set out. Yeah, Ram, you want to go to the next slide?
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Vijay. So let's move on. So we want to talk about just a little about SuneraTech. I think we spoke about data modernization, how businesses are looking, and what kind of work which will go into data modernization, right? So we just wanted to give a snapshot of SuneraTech, who we are and what we are trying to do, and how we are helping businesses. Uh, it's again like we are like a 1200 plus employee company, and we are seeing a tremendous growth in the last 3 years, and we have 200 plus customers, and as you can see, we have wide variety of services, platform solutions, and also like we are a Oracle #1 a cloud velocity partner, and we are doing a lot of initiatives in Oracle space. And from the data and analytics thing, I think we are doing a wide variety of implementations around Oracle, Azure, and AWS. So we have the capabilities all around what is going on. But I would like to bring a couple of programs which we are doing as a part of data and analytics. We have a program called like zero cost analytics migration to cloud. That is something like that is we are seeing a lot of customers are leveraging that and looking how we can help. And also like we have a lot of advisory services which is coming into light, like from last year or so we are seeing a trend, because again, if you see, there is a lot of uh, emphasis is going on around data, but businesses are struggling to articulate the business value, and as well as doing the assessment of their current architecture and also their current the business objectives. I think like what we are trying to do is we are doing a lot of advisory services around that to help businesses to articulate the value of these data initiatives. That is somewhere like we can help doing that as well. Vijay, you want to add something?
Yeah, you're pretty much spot on, Ram. So just to maybe re-emphasize, business case articulation is one of the key drivers of any of your analytics initiatives, right? All of you understand that. So from that standpoint, it's pretty much very, very important to get that particular part of it ironed out, right? So to that extent, it's very critical to have a proper business case and as I was telling a while back, what's the best case scenario, what's the worst case scenario, and how are you going to articulate some of those things becomes very critical, right? And then pretty much follows down, right? Once you have that ironed out, to me, it's very logical, right? So
Yeah.
that's how we look at some of these things, right? And yeah, and how do you articulate what kind of business? Some of the questions can be, hey, what can be possibly business outcomes, your sales growth, your innovation in products, how do you attract new customers, maybe risk mitigation, improve your overall efficiency, how do I spread, how do I, there is a use case where customer was talking about, hey, I want to have a situation where my information systems must be accessible to large variety of our people without compromising on data security. So in that sense, the KPIs are going to be pretty much different from what we have seen in a regular implementations, right? So these are some of
Yeah.
the interesting conversations and help that we have rendered to some of our customers. Now I think we should ask, throw the floor open for questions.
Thanks, Vijay. Thank you. Yeah.
Thanks, Vijay. Thanks, Ram. That was a great talk. Really, thanks for your insights. We have some 6 minutes for the time. We'll take some questions now. We'll throw the floor open for questions. Ram, the first question is, can you please detail what you mean by the zero cost analytics program?
Yeah. Okay. So right now, again, I will just summarize it, Gayatri. But if there is a follow-up things, actually we can take up. But the zero cost cloud migration is actually like, if you see, we have a program which we are running for our cloud customers, right? Especially like Oracle cloud customers, where we are basically like migrating. So it's exactly the same thing. Zero cost analytics migration is, we will basically analyze, assess again if they are eligible for the lift and shift of their existing Oracle workloads on-prem. We will migrate them to autonomous data warehouse as well as Oracle Analytics, and it will be like a free of cost to them. And we can go through that program details actually like in detail, but it's an extension of zero cost cloud migration to data and analytics.
Okay. Sure. One more question which has come up is, what is the how do we know that which is the right model for moving to while migrating to a while doing a data migration? How do we finalize what is the right model for migration?
Yeah, this is where actually we would like to do a workshop. This is how we are basically like doing an assessment and look at their existing environment as well as like what is their business goals, right? To recommend what kind of strategy is right for them, because it's again, we are running so many programs as a part of our data and analytics programs, and everyone is unique. So I would say basically like it will start with a workshop, and we can basically come and help them out. Vijay, you want to add something around that?
Yeah. If you can slightly re-articulate the question, I had a bit of audio challenge. I'm not sure if you guys are able to hear me.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, can you re-articulate the question, please?
Gayatri, can you repeat that question once?
Yeah, sure. The question was, how do we know which is the right model for data migration? How do we choose it?
Oh, so as I said, your North Pole is what your business wants. Okay, get that pretty much. If that is sorted out, then trust me, most of it is done and dusted. if
No,
you're
to help them
right.
out, right? I think
Yeah.
like
So for
rather than that,
example,
help them out with the steps, right? What we can do.
right.
Yeah.
So for example, when we are talking about the migration, there is a business case that you need for the migration, right? And second one, you're also going to talk about what are the prioritizations from a business delivery standpoint. That's the second step that you do. Once you have these two things ironed out, the third thing that you will see is, hey, what is that you want to get out of this? That's the third thing that you are looking at. And who are going to be the consumers of this? So this is all dwelling in your business, with your business teams, right? So that is something which you have ironed out. Then the next step that you see is, hey, is it important that I pull all of my enterprise data into a centralized repository, or I'll go line of business? This is something which you need to validate in terms of the speed to be, because there is an element of speed that the business is expecting from you. So depending on that, you will decide which is a better approach. So I'm giving you what are the steps that you need to be aware of, because it is very case to case specific, right? So there are
Okay.
organizations which have gone ahead and said, hey, forget about all that, my priority is sales. Then you know pretty much what is that you need to focus on, right? And then once you have that ironed out, you know what business users are looking at, then that pretty much drives your tech tool stack, right? So am I making sense?
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah.
Yeah,
I think
definitely.
yeah.
One more question which we have is, what is lake house, and what's its advantage over data lake?
Okay, so I would, sorry, Rami, would you want to take this question
No. Go
or?
ahead. Go ahead. Good, Vijay.
All
It's
right.
fine.
Okay. So traditionally, data lake has been a mechanism. So here is how this entire story evolved, right? We have had challenges with respect to very costly storage, right? Once that barrier was broken, people started moving all kind of data into a data lake. And as I was telling a while back, this was done basically to store the data with a thought that, okay, let's store the data first and then we'll think of leveraging it later, which means that you are trying to tie the cart ahead of the horse. You have not defined your information management strategies, right? So that is one of the lacuna. So once the data is in the lake, you just do not know how do you connect the various data forms, right? That's one problem that you have. The second thing that it imposes is, because it is not a data which is ready for consumption, to that extent, it's largely stiff. It's not flexible, right? The data in a data lake is not flexible. Then we have implementations where people pulled the data from a data lake into again a different kind of a repository, which actually means you are defeating the entire purpose of having the data in a centralized locality, right? So this is something which has significantly plagued a lot of implementations. So that is where the data lake, lake house comes into a picture, wherein technologies like Snowflake, etc., are giving you the capability to have both a SMP and a MPP kind of an architecture to bring in great processing and storage powers, and capability to handle a wide variety of data to do your ETLs. It's not anymore called ETLs. It's basically called
Pipeline.
data pipeline building, right? So that is something that comes into the picture. And then you have tools that are capable of handling various kinds of data from analysis standpoint,
Yeah,
right?
to add Vijay's point, right? That is the word, actually acronym, which I used again. The cloud data warehouse is the term which they are using for lake house. Okay. And also like to bring that perspective, right? It's if you see the new product autonomous data warehouse, it's basically, it's all trying to solve the same problem, right? 90% of your data at your company generates is a semi-structured data. How can you consume that as a part of your data strategy? And that's where these cloud data warehouses or lake houses are coming into picture. Okay. And we are seeing the data lakes also as a part of this architecture. Okay. uh, Again, like to bring the best of all worlds, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Did the
Okay.
question get answered or?
Sure, I think it did. Thanks, Ram. Thanks, Vijay. I think we are on time now. So thank you so much for this webinar, and thank you so much for joining us today. Thanks all. Have a wonderful day. Take care. Bye.
Yep. Thank you. Thanks everyone.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye.